Hi everyone, Ryan OTTO here. Now before the intro, I just want to let you guys know what's covered in this episode. Now this is the second part of an earlier episode that you guys have probably listened to if you're here right now, where I'm going into the five fundamental, the five most profitable property investment strategies I'm using in my business right now in May 2019 and all throughout the rest of the summer and maybe throughout the rest of this particular year, but definitely from May to September right now in 2019. The biggest question every entrepreneur, landlord and guru wants to know is this: how are landlords and entrepreneurs like us increasing our rent up to £42,155 a year above the market rent from a single property? Now that replaces the average salary, whether we're the owner of the property or we're just the tenant. You're listening to Ryan OTTO, and this podcast will give you all the answers. Welcome to the perfect property deal. So the next strategy, property investment strategy I'm using right now in 2019 is property flips or controlling properties that I don't necessarily have to be the owner of. Now, for new investors, they may not understand what I mean by that. Let me just explain that a bit further. So I'm talking about making money from properties that I'm not necessarily the owner of. That could be a property that somebody wants to sell. They've approached an agent, or they're selling it themselves privately, so it's on the market of some sort, or it's off the market. It's just available to sell. Now let's say that property needs some work, or it needs renovating, or it just needs a facelift. I mean a kitchen, a bathroom, carpets, decoration, the usual things that you can, turn around and add value to the property, so bring it from being outdated to completely modern and clinical and updated and in line with the current climate and times and the expectations of what a new buyer would want. Does that make sense? So you found the property, you would buy the property, or you could buy the property the conventional way, where you would put a deposit down, you would get a mortgage, then you would use solicitors, then you would complete on the property. This is a very simplified version. Now you're the property owner. Now you would do the work to the property, add the value, and then you would sell the property on to somebody else. That's the old conventional way of doing it, which we used to do back in the year 2000 when I first got started in property and when I bought my first property in the Southeast, when my journey started in this business. So that's the old, outdated, conventional way. Now, in 2019, you don't need to use the old, outdated model or the strategies that worked back then, but they may work now in 2019, but they won't maximize your profit. They won't minimize your risk. They won't deliver on everything else that a property transaction can and will deliver and will provide without you having to be the legal owner or buying the property the old archaic way. Does that make sense? So what I'm about to share with you now is another way that we buy properties, you could say, but it's more of a controlling the property. Instead of having to complete and pay all the fees and raise a mortgage deposit and get a mortgage agreed and all the shenanigans that come with that, and then waiting the lengthy time it takes to go through that process, and then you're whoopee, the legal owner. You can eradicate all of that nonsense right now in 2019 just by using some clever and sophisticated investment strategies that we've been using since the year 2000 and every year since to control these properties without having to own them. So just imagine how quicker you could make money from properties. Being able to control it in this way instead of having to buy it the old archaic way, saving for a deposit, making sure you're creditworthy and mortgageable, paying a deposit, exchanging contracts, paying solicitors' legal fees, then completing, paying stamp duty, all of the other crap that comes with it. You can avoid all of that by doing this one simple thing. Controlling properties without having to be the legal owner. It's a very good strategy that we're using right now, okay? So we're in May 2019. I've just refocused and realigned my business plan month by month and season by season to work out the direction where I'm going right now for the current climate, the current cities I'm working in and sourcing properties in and doing deals in, okay? I mean, in the trenches doing the deals. So this is a plan I've just put together and I'm sharing it with you guys right now. Now this keeps me on track, it keeps me focused, it keeps me moving in the right direction because it's very easy to, be offered a different offer from somebody or a joint venture with someone or a new business opportunity or some exciting thing over there and something over there, and before you know it, you're pulled in all different directions and you're distracted, and then you're doing 10% of what you should be doing instead of 60, 70, 80%, focused on the core business which you've been doing or should be doing and continue doing to drive your company forward and your profits up, okay? So I've realigned everything in the last few days, and that's what I'm sharing with you guys right now on this episode of this podcast. So 50% of my time right now is focused on controlling property that I don't have to be the owner of. Now, you may know that or heard of that called a property flip. Absolutely fine. So a flip is where you technically buy a property, then you would resell that property once you've added value in some way, and then you would make the difference. You would have the balance of the profit after all of the fees and expenses and purchase price has been paid. Now, the way we do it right now in my business, and to be honest, it hasn't changed since we got started in the year 2000. Since about 2003, 2004, I've been using these strategies. So I haven't just woken up and decided, let's have a go at some of these. I've been consistently using these since the early 2000s, okay, guys? So to build up the cash pot of money that you can use and recycle and put into other deals or pay for the lifestyle that you want in lump sums, this is what you should be doing. And this is where I'm focusing 50% of my attention right now, guys, okay? So this is finding properties that need work done to them or they're undervalued in some way because there's a margin to add value. Now that could be refurbishment. That could be dealing with legalities or complicated challenges relating to the property. It could be where a property has subsidence, or even the neighbor's property has subsidence and it's affecting this property being sold, okay? We've actually got one of those deals going through right now in the southeast where that is a problem. It was on the market for over a year, or I think it was about 18 months in total. Went around, all the agents started off real high and it's come down, considerably lower because the neighboring house has got subsidence and there was an issue and it has never been resolved. They've never got any certificates or anything like that. So the house attached to it, because it's a semi, is not mortgageable. No bank will lend on it, okay? So we managed to find one of those, and that is a particular property that I'm working on right now. It hasn't cost me any money per se, or I didn't buy it the conventional way, but I do pay the owner who actually inherited the property some money every single month. They needed some money for their expenses. It's around about £550 a month that I pay them. Gave them a small amount of money up front, which they needed to free up some of their bills, just a small 4-figure sum. And we exchanged or entered into an agreement at a certain price today, right? Which was still more than they had it on the market for. And then there's a period of time where my team, my solicitors will unravel the legal challenges and all of the shenanigans relating to why the other house next door hasn't been underpinned to do with the subsidence, or if it has, where and why the certificate's not provided, okay? And it's actually a council property next door, so this is where the complications come from. So we're unraveling that, and anything that we sell it for above what it costs me, above the price of the money I've put in every single month until it sells, above how much I agreed with the vendor to purchase it for, anything above that is shared between me or my holding company and the vendor. So the vendor gets a lot more money than he originally had it on the market for, and I enter into this deal with hardly putting any money in at all, where I've controlled that property without actually owning it, without putting a mortgage deposit in, without applying for a mortgage, and all of those things that come with it. So technically, I'm using the finance or using the property and paying a reasonable rate every month, which is more or less what the mortgage would be. So I'm paying about £550 a month to the vendor. While they own the property, I do all the work, or my company does all the work, deal with the challenges next door, and resell that property, and we share the profit between us. Now, that's just one example, guys, that I'm sharing with you, which is how we control properties that we don't have to own, we don't have to buy. So technically, you guys don't need any money to do this, as long as you can negotiate very well, and it avoids the money you would need if you bought it a conventional way. I mean, exchange deposits and mortgage deposits and being mortgageable and eligible to get a mortgage and all of those other things that come with buying a property the conventional way. So this completely avoids all of that. Okay, guys? Now, we're also dealing with delayed completions at the same time, which is a similar strategy. This is where I'm spending 50% of my time in flips. I'm just running through a few different examples or case studies of how we apply the controlling method to control these properties without technically buying them and being a legal owner, but having all of the benefits, all of the upside, all of the profit and more by skillfully structuring deals in this particular way. Okay, guys? Now, it works exactly the same with refurbs. It may need £10,000 worth of work. With the £10,000 worth of work, the property may be worth £20,000 more on top of your $10,000 you invested. So £30,000 more, less your 10, you can make around, say, £20,000 with that example, which you would normally lose in the legal fees, in the financing costs, the carrying costs, the solicitor's fees, the closing costs, the stamp duty, and everything else, making it a non-starting deal, okay? So by not buying it the conventional way, using these delayed completions or any particular strategy we need to use around flipping property and not having to buy it complete and then resell it, creates a very good cash pot for us to use again on different deals, or for you to just fund the lifestyle that you want or that you deserve, okay? Now, the controlling properties, which we're spending 50% of our time on right now, that covers repossessions. It could be somebody that's facing repossession and they can't sell the property because they haven't got the right amount of time or the skills or the pressure from the mortgage lender. So again, this works in those situations where you can enter into an agreement with the vendor, deal with the mortgage company, make sure they're happy. Maybe you'll have to pay an amount or a sum or the arrears to the mortgage company for the mortgage company to agree to give the vendor more time, okay? And then all you're doing with the more time is getting the property up to a certain standard, and you're reselling the property without owning the property, okay, guys? And that's another version of how we're doing these deals within the umbrella of buying or controlling properties that we don't have to be the owner of, okay, guys? Now, another one that we're using right now is negative equity. Now, even in the current climate, you will find that there is some people in negative equity. which simply means they owe more money than their house is worth, or the loans and charges and mortgage on the property, and then the agent's fees or the selling fees or work that needs to be done to bring the property up to a standard that they could sell the property at. So for example, it could just be a property worth £200,000, but then with agent's fees and their mortgage costs and their secured loan and anything else that they took out on the property or any charges, maybe it equates to £205,000 or even more, just any amount above what the property's worth. That would mean the person can't sell the property right now, so they're in negative equity. Now this works in exactly the same way by controlling that property without actually buying it. Because if you buy it, you've got all the costs associated with the acquisition costs, the purchasing costs, you've got the legal fees, the stamp duty, the mortgage deposit, the financing costs for you to buy it, then do whatever you're doing in the middle to add value, obviously if it's in negative equity, and then reselling it, it's costing you a lot of money just to be the legal owner, okay? That's another thing that you can avoid by literally controlling properties without actually owning them. Now, we've been doing this for a long time, since around about negative equity. That was around the credit crunch. So that would have been when we first started to use this strategy around about 2007, when obviously the recession came and there was a credit crunch, okay? And there wasn't hardly any finance or no finance around, and prices were falling every single second of the day, and you had to adapt quickly. So we've been using that strategy for 10 or 12 years or so, okay, guys? So I'm spending 50% of my time right now on flips. Now, I've described, 4 or 5 different scenarios of how we're flipping properties right now, where we don't necessarily have to be the owner, and we're putting in no money or minimal amount of money compared to what it would cost us if we bought the property the conventional way. There's absolutely no need for us to buy it in the conventional way, okay? So that builds up the cash pot. It takes us probably around 3 months or so before we see a return. So if you're looking for an instant return right now on your time, flips takes longer, at least 3 months or so. Imagine you've got to do the work or just have it under a contract and resell it for more. Obviously, that's when you see the money, when it's sold. It does take around 3 to 9 months. So if you're looking for instant income in your business, flipping properties right now probably isn't the right strategy for you. However, if you've got another source of income, like in the earlier episode, we was sharing how we're spending 30% of our time on, service accommodation, which provides fantastic cash flow. We got some properties that generate up to £42,155 a year, which is £3,500 a month above the market rent that we paid to the landlord. So when you have a balance of these things, the cash flow coming in somewhere else, another strategy that we've been using and teaching as it happened since around 2005, 14 years ago when we first started guaranteed rent, then it frees up your time and it frees up some capital that you will need, and it also gives you the experience so you can focus on building up your cash pot and doing some property flips without having to put the money in, without having to be the legal owner, without having to pay stamp duty and legal fees and all of the other shenanigans that come with it, and the waste of time that it takes 3-4 months to acquire a property in that particular way. Okay, guys? So if you're interested in flips, that's a very good way for you to get started. It builds up your cash pot. We're spending around 50% of our time right now in May 2019 focusing on flipping properties using those strategies and many more strategies that we have in our toolbox for controlling property that I just couldn't share on a 20-minute podcast. It will take a lot longer to go through all of those. Okay, guys? So you will need some capital for this strategy, nowhere near what you would need if you were buying the property the conventional way. You will have to invest your time. It does take at least 3 months or so to see the return or to see the profit. And obviously you will need to have some experience or partner with somebody that has the experience. So when you're approaching a vendor or an agent or something like that, then you can borrow their credibility or borrow their knowledge or borrow their backing, knowing that you're not going to get backed into a corner with a question that you don't know the answer to, because you've got the support of your partner, JV partner, mentor, coach, whatever you want to call the person that you're working with. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode, and I would love to hear how you're doing with your particular deals and any success that you have with this strategy. I hope you get some value from this episode. I would love to hear your thoughts, okay, guys? Now, in another episode, I'm going to share with you the third strategy that we're using, which is joint ventures, okay, guys? Another strategy we're using right now in 2019, especially now from May all the way through to the end of the year, especially the end of the summer, probably the end of the year and further into 2020, which is joint ventures. Now, I hope you got some value from this episode. I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Let me know what you think, guys. My friend, if you're not already using arbitrage, what I mean by that is taking a rental property you don't have to be the owner of out of the AST rental market and putting it on Booking.com. You stand to lose out on the largest transfer of wealth that's happening right now in 2019. Because every £1,000 of AST rent is now worth up to £3,000 of rent on Booking.com. If you're not focusing all of your attention on Booking.com right now, you stand to lose. Now, you have a massive advantage over the other 2.5 million landlords that are also looking for these secrets. Don't waste that advantage by doing nothing after listening to this talk today. You can join our communities on social media called Ask Ryan OTTO to discuss these episodes and have your questions answered on the next show. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Snapchat. I would love to hear from you and know what you liked about this talk.